Miss Jones, will you make a copy of this?
Naturally. I make perfect copies of whatever my boss needs by just turning a knob and pushing a button. Anything he can see, I can copy in black and white on ordinary paper. Sometimes my boss asks me which is the original, and sometimes I don't know.
Hello and welcome to my Model Corner Project 40. We'll be building, painting, and detailing Trumpeter's J-20 Mighty Dragon, a stealth 5th generation fighter. Since this kit was listed as the Beast Mode edition, I already expected quite a number of molded plastic pieces along with other involved build accessories that would take a bit of time to coalesce together. With that said, it's time to check the contents out.
Well now, let's just see if there's anything missing.
We start with the ejection seat and the cockpit work. We have a number of other internal components that need to be constructed and painted before they can be installed in the fuselage, so this is the beginning of a longer process than usual. Here's the canopy actuator, the pilot's flight control stick, throttle, and the ejection seat handle. And the seat cushion here. We'll lay out our parts as usual on the painting palette before we start adding the black shading, which acts as a primer coat as well. After that, we mask off the cockpit avionics control panels before adding the next coat of paint, which will be the gray. Removing the masking now gets our avionics panels revealed once again with the need for some touch-ups. Then we get our sanding stick and hobby knife tip to scrape away some of the black to expose knobs and switches using the natural gray color of the molded plastic. Some chrome's dabbed on here as a base color to the HUD projection lens area. As with the cockpit tub, we scrape away for the multifunction display control buttons and other switches and knobs. Back to the ejection seat, we paint in the cushions. We continue construction by adding the back of the ejection seat and then the sides. We do have a photo etch harness for the shoulder straps, lap belt, and leg restraints all grouped together in this piece. As in the past, we scrape away the paint here to create some wear and also highlight the detail with some artificial light reflection. One problem throughout this build was the decal set. They were very fragile and wouldn't stick. This will be the first encounter with the decal inadequacies. After putting most of the cockpit together, we'll hold off on the HUD glass and lens and add those later on towards the end of the build. The Camo 2 custom mixture is rather complicated, and I came up with it only because I kept changing it around, so it became unnecessarily involved. Turning our attention to the landing gear bays and gear themselves, I added gray primer only because I've had trouble in the past with the Tamiya gloss white adhering properly to the plastic, so this was an attempt to improve the process. With the oil wash this time, we're not trying to make anything too dirty, it's more about creating shadows to bring out the details as well as providing scale, so the cleanup will be more rigorous this time around. Using a cocktail stick, the wire harnesses are filled in with some black paint. After the two sides are finished, we can begin building up the nose gear bay. Same as we saw with the F-35, we have these puzzle piece type tabs that lock the parts together, which is no real surprise as both of these kits were manufactured by Trumpeter. Unfortunately, because of the way this model was engineered, we have to put in the nose gear strut now to maintain the best strength and integrity of this section. I don't particularly like this setup because there is a risk of damaging the gear during the rest of the build with all the handling and moving the model about. For the main gear bays and struts, I went ahead and did some dry fit checks to determine if there would be enough room to put these together later and forgo hazarding these parts if we added them now. It seemed there was enough clearance, so we should be safe with this aspect near the end of the project. The minor parts such as the torque links fit just fine, and putting them on is easier than it looks, but in order to record their additions and not block the camera view, I have to do these odd angled shots and twister moves with the construction that you've seen in most of my videos. My camera was out of focus for the two main gear tire and hub assembly steps, so all I have is the nose wheel clip to show you. Images of the J-20 show that the nose wheel hub is white while the main tire hubs are darker gray, which the XF-82 Ocean Gray matches perfectly. The main weapons bay is next, and this is of course in the central bay area in the belly of the aircraft where a lot of the ordnance can be housed. After laying parts all out on the next two pallets, you'll see we'll use the primer gray again to help out with the white gloss coat adherence rather than spraying directly onto plain plastic. You'll see a repeat of many of the same steps of painting various sections. Kind of looks tedious, but just to show you the work and how each area of the build all contribute to the final results. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Like with the F-35 build, we have these little artifacts on the wings from the molding process, and we'll need to sand down, and some masking tape is laid out to protect the surrounding areas. We can put the cockpit into the upper fuselage half at this moment, and that fit decently in there. If you're planning to hang anything off of your wings, you'll need to drill out the holes for the pylons that will hold the missiles, external fuel tanks, or a combination of both. I've already decided to do the full beast mode, with just the missiles making this configuration a short-ranged offensive or defensive fighter. The side weapons bays also need to be installed prior to the fuselage mating. We start with the left, and here's a look at it from the outside. Our main gear with the aft bulkhead subassembly is next. All fits well with no problems at this point. The central bay fits satisfactorily too, just needs a little maneuvering to get in there, and to look at all that from the outside. Each engine air intake side comes in two pieces, and we'll join those once the internal sides are painted. These intakes attach to their own bulkhead piece. I'm not sure why all this lattice work is here, because none of this is remotely visible from any perspective once the fuselage is all put together. The intakes also fit fine, but care should be taken that the bottoms and outer sides of their front ends mate to the fuselage at the same time. Also, prior to closing this all up, airbrushing the top and bottom of the intake forward sections here will be much easier now than doing later. The bottom forward nose section is separate from the fuselage bottom half and creates a three-piece main fuselage strategy towards construction. After the black shading coat, I started airbrushing in the gray for the pattern in the front of the air intakes without masking off the areas, so retroactively I added some tape. Once the next shade of gray is applied, this will all look better. After that was set up, the nose gear bay has to go in before we can add this section to the fuselage. Adding the two aircraft model halves is always a step that feels like a bit of progress has been achieved and almost like a halfway point. The fit was okay, but not great. Lots of clamps to make sure our initial seal is good to avoid some extra work. I elected not to add the canard wings at this time as directed by the instructions. They each have a disc at the end of the tabs to maybe be able to adjust their positions when on display, but I didn't think it was necessary and planned to pose them in a relatively neutral angle anyway. This means later on we'll have to cut off those discs to insert the little wings. Some rubber foam and tape is applied to button up our jet and protect all our work up to now from the subsequent painting overspray and other work. We'll take a break from all my talking and bring in our rain and provide you with some J-20 specifications. For the camouflage patterns, we can use the paint and decal guide to form our painting mask. It's adorned with relatively simple patterns, so we can rely on our paper templates as we've done sometimes in the past. The guide views of the J-20 are the same scale this time around, so only one calculation set was needed. Only the top of the fuselage and vertical tails have camouflage, so the sides and bottom fuselage are just one main color. I'll show a few clips here of cutting out the camouflage outlines from the photocopies. Essentially, we have three colors. Although the first color is just contained within strict borders, I still named it as Camo 1. If you want to use my technique for creating the mask, you can check out my video on that method in more detail. After I laid down one or two masks, I don't know why, but I painted these areas in, maybe to see how it would look before continuing on with affixing more paper coverings. These initial pieces cover where the darkest color would go, which I called Camo 3. These use areas were for Camo 1 since they could be prepared using straight masking tape. Unfortunately, I was using the kit-provided paint guide that erroneously showed narrow gray air intake borders, which are actually supposed to be wider. So I'll show the corrective measures taken with that later on. So the bottom fuselage is just covered with Camo 2, which is easy enough with no significant masks or templates. Moving to the top, the masks come more into play. After we remove the mask, you can see the unpainted areas where the Camo 3 will end up. The completed work is then masked off for our last color. Usually, I don't do a perfect job with the lining up of the various tapes and paper, which leaves me with a touch of airbrush base to fill in the missing slivers. The nose radome is engraved, making it simple to line up the tape. Camo 3 goes on, which is the darkest color, and is just straight unmodified Tamiya Ocean Gray 2. The nose has a slightly bluer color than the surrounding area, so a little medium blue was added to the Camo 2 mixture to offset the two. As expected, after all the paper and tape is removed, some small areas were missed, and we'll go in there and remedy the omissions. We don't have any glass for the nav lights, so we base color with chrome and then add the appropriate clear colors, left red and right green. There are some panels on the top fuselage and nose region that will mask off and fill in with the lighter gray, giving us more of those little details that augment our model. I think this is the very first time I've painted using a copper color since I was 10 years old. It's just never come up since then. Like the nav lights, we'll base with chrome and then add clear red for our optical sensors here. And to fix our intake borders, the masks were affixed further back to widen them for our airbrushing. We have a little more photo etch. I think these are data link antennas. I couldn't find definitive information on them. Some have suggested these may be linked to the air intake airflow, but earlier images of the J-20 didn't have these other than patterns marked out on the sides, so they don't seem related to airflow. We'll remove our painting protections now and reveal our past work to the light of day once more. After a gloss coat has been applied, we're ready to decorate the jet. Same as before, the decals were scary delicate and just didn't want to stay put. One of the national insignias tangled up, and it was a close call from losing it completely. It was a bit of a battle to get them lined up, even with my reference tape, sit still, and not fail somehow. I was really disappointed with these, and we still have one more long session to deal with coming up. I found out that lighter fluid cleans up Tamiya panel liner wash, which I haven't used since probably the A6 intruder build, so I thought of trying it out again here. This process of utilizing the lighter fluid was convenient since I already have it on hand when I use oil-based detail wash. A combination of cotton swabs and paper towels was used for the removal of the excess. All the smaller flight control surfaces have to be caught up with the rest of the jet, so all the same processes of the black shading, masking, airbrushing, and all the different camouflages and borders all have to be repeated. So again, this might be tedious to watch, but I want to show all that was done and how I got to the finish line. It might be instructive too, or maybe not. There is no clear view of the inboard side of the vertical tails on this kit's paint guide, and therefore we can't make photocopy masks. So I had to draw out the camo patterns for both templates before airbrushing Camo 3 on both sides. Considering I can't draw very well, I thought they came out pretty good. The Mighty Dragon has ventral fins on the bottom like the F-16, which we can add on here. For the tail number, I took a real existing number from a J-20 I saw in a video to give our jet a more authentic feature, so I copied that as 61227. The decal sheet has a generous set of numbers on it, so you can come up with quite a number of combinations and create the one you're looking for in your project. There are decals for the slime lights, which you are able to line up with the engraved outlines on the model, but strangely, there are no etchings on the vertical tails to use. By eye or measured out will be necessary for those. On to the engines. We have two representative engines here with basically just the aft sections. We don't have the whole of the power plants as we've come across in recent builds. This piece is nice, but causes problems which will be noted shortly. Just the basics of the nozzles, burner ducts, and the aft turbine fan blades. I don't show it, but a white oil wash was used to highlight the turkey feather slats and depressions on the nozzle areas. You see here all the saw teeth line up nicely, but the circumferences of the nacelle segment are wider than the fuselage side. So either you have to line up one side flush with the fuselage and sand down the other, or you have to split the difference and sand to level them on the upper and bottom sides. For myself, I split them. Now to a very labor-intensive section of our build, the missiles. Not overly complicated, but a lot of it. We start with the two simple PL-10 missiles. I don't know why I put the rail on the first one earlier, but I shouldn't have done that because it made painting a little more difficult on that one. For the PL-15s, we build the initial 6 that will fill in that central weapons bay. Since we're going for the full beast mode, we'll have to cut and assemble these 8 additional missiles. Of course, we need our pylons, can't hang anything without them. The instructions called for these to be white, but I couldn't find a single image of the J-20 with wing-mounted missiles. I only found a couple of images where external fuel tanks were fitted and the pylons were gray, so I went with the gray by gut preference. One more decal adventure. We have so many of these troublesome things to put on all of these missile bodies, and as you might expect, it was a nightmare of alignment, not adhering, etc. We have some doors to attend to. On the weapons doors, you can elect to add an outline. From various pictures of the real J-20 aircraft, some have these doors delineated with dark outlines, some with light gray outlines, or others with no outlines at all. Dealer's choice. I thought the borders would add some flair to the model, so here we are. We have these actuators with little panel sections that are part of the side weapons bays and are part of the missile rail deployment system. Very tiny, and CA glue was employed here. We're starting putting everything together here, beginning with the missiles in the main compartment, so we're on the downwind leg at this point. once again taking a painstaking approach to twist these into place and avoid obscuring the camera view. The moment of truth, getting the main landing gear into their respective bays, was reached. As you can see, the choice not to put them in earlier worked out as they had been tested before. The weighted wheels are keyed with the axle, and we'll have to rely on this being correctly oriented when they are contacting the table surface. Otherwise, it might be a little work to get them adjusted properly. Using the reference picture in the inset shows the side weapons door and missile rail deployed while in a hangar, so we take our cue from that positioning. Just a few pieces more to add on to the nose gear, which we held up on to preserve them from any mishaps earlier. Repeating the gear steps as we did with the left side, we add on the right gear equipment. All the gear is pretty sturdy, so no real worries about any collapse. The main bay doors are put at a 30-degree angle, while the thinner doors are to be affixed parallel to the bottom of the fuselage bay. On with the missile assemblies to give this fighter some punch, trying not to break the missiles off while adding these all on. Now we have a beast of an airplane. Let's roll out 180 degrees. We'll start with the left side flight control surfaces by adding the canard wing into the neutral position after cutting off that disc on the tab we spoke of earlier, the leading edge flap, the vertical tail, and then the trailing edge flaps. Then similarly, we add all the components on the right side. The glossy nav lights and the HUD glass are covered temporarily while we add some flat coat and take out that excess shine on the aircraft. Adding the canopy finishes it off. Take care, and we'll see you later.
Time